G'day and welcome to my video on how to check out a junkyard hi-fi. Well, I normally make car restoration videos. About 99.5% of my videos are about car restoration. And I'm having trouble, I'm rebuilding a couple of V8s and I'm having trouble with a clearance in one of them. So I've gone behind here to get my workshop manual for the car, all behind here where the other manuals are kept. And of course I've looked up in that corner up there and I've seen the very corner of my first brand new amplifier when I was younger. And I used to have this huge stereo in the 80s and early 90s, a great big thing, and all the good stuff's been sold off, so I've only really got the junk left. So I thought I'm going to get this out and test it and just have a fiddle around. Anyway, I got carried away and I bought some old speakers because I didn't have any standard stereo speakers, I only had powered computer ones, and bought some old speakers for $75. One's got a dud tweeter, and I also bought an open reel tape deck. And so in this video we're going to have a look at some of that stuff. Please don't leave comments like your hi-fi stuff sucks and it's rubbish, because I know. So anyway, look, see what you think of the video. Hope you enjoy it. In going through all my junk, I've come across a few bits of my very first hi-fi gear, and this is barely what you call hi-fi. It's absolute rubbish. That was the first tape deck I ever bought. It's an NEC unit, obviously. I've got the invoice and so forth filed away nicely inside somewhere, so I've got to look for that, and it's really dirty. I would doubt very much that this will work. And along with that is my first amplifier, which you can see is in rubbish condition. It's been neglected. It's a Toshiba. I think this was $99 and the cassette deck was $79 when I bought it way back in 1982-83. Comes with a dead spider, and it is in absolutely dreadful condition. So the first thing we'll do is give it a bit of a dust off. As I said, I have my doubts as to whether this stuff will still work. It's been sort of hoarded away in this garage for a long time. And we'll take the cover off and have a bit of a look inside. And oddly enough, the fasteners that hold the case on look to be the same thread and type as what you find in a computer holding the CD-ROM in, but whatever, it doesn't matter. I just want to get this off and have a bit of a look. Well, it doesn't look very tidy, but it's not too bad. And of course, let's see if we can see that very well. Here we have a linear power supply. It's just a transformer. So your AC goes in and 12 volts, whatever comes out of it. That aluminium strip in the centre with the transistors on it, that's the amplifier section. And so transistors can either be electronic switches or amplifiers. We can go into that sort of thing later. It's got a little electronic display at the front, which are a pair of LED VU meters, a couple of fuses, capacitors, all that sort of stuff. Lots and lots of little transistors and bits and pieces like that. Volume pot is there. So it all is fairly basic. This is a very low price amplifier. A couple of big capacitors there. So yeah, look, not a high-end bit from 1983 or whatever it was, but certainly, I'm sort of hopeful it still works, to be honest. So I'll take it inside and give it a nice clean up. So, what's this? Oh, your tape and source, and of course your loudness is there. So I'll blow it out with compressed air and take it in and give it a wash, give it a bath. Moving on to the cassette deck, I put my eldest daughter's name on it. I gave this to her when she was probably 4 or 5 or something. I think she was just putting stuff in the tape holder or whatever. It was just a toy. I remember almost cutting the leads off the back because I was worried about her hurting herself with that. We'll rip this cover off and have a bit of a look in here as well. And look, what we're going to do with this series is we're not going to resurrect this stuff. I mean, we might test it and see how it works, but I want to get some nice retro hi-fi Sansui type stuff if I can and build up a retro system, because I used to be very interested in it. Of course, I moved on from this stuff quite early on the piece and got black components and a surround processor and graphic equalizers and a different amplifier and all this sort of stuff. I didn't use this after much, or after a certain amount of time, because it just didn't cut it for what I wanted. So at any rate, it offers a little bit, whoops, if it offers a little bit of nostalgia, then that's not a bad thing. This is actually quite clean inside. And of course there we have a little power supply as well. Again, it's a linear power supply, not a switching power supply. We'll go into what the differences with those are. It's got a belt there, which will be absolutely knackered, I would think, because rubber has a way of perishing. That's only a belt for the tape counter by the look of it. A lot of hi-fi gear that you can get now with eBay and so forth, you get overseas through ex-United States. And it really does appear that there's a lot of better quality equipment there than there was sort of offered here. At least it doesn't come up for sale so much. So I'm thinking about getting ex-US stuff. And of course you can use a step-down transformer. They're readily available, and we'll talk about those as well, to power them, so you don't have to get stuck with 110 volts. Although I think it's 60 hertz there, where here is 50. So we need to sort of consider that as well. But that is in fairly good nick. There's a belt there. I'm not holding my breath as to how good that will be. But there are places that offer new replacement belts and that sort of stuff. But I don't think this is really worth restoring. It's not very good quality. But again, we'll blow it out. Give it a nice wash with a damp cloth and see where that gets us. Alright, so here is our Junkyard audio system, and of course this stuff I bought later than I thought. The amplifier, and I've got a habit of dating everything when I get it, 15th of April 1983, and of course the cassette was the 15th of April 1984. That's odd. I bought them exactly a year apart from one another, so there's the dockets for them. They were both $99. I thought that was $79. But I ended up paying $99 as well, and I bought a CDC turntable at the same time, which I think is still in a cupboard at my mother's house. Now, true to the description, this is off a rubbish pile, and I brought it home and tested it, and it worked well because it had this CD in it. I think it's a CD. Yeah, it is a CD. So I never bothered to sort of investigate any further, and I realised why it was on the rubbish pile, and that's that it's missing a couple of buttons there. So in order to get it out, you need to sort of power the machine up and prod a screwdriver into the micro switch, and then of course the caddy will come out, hopefully. There we go, open. Come on. Oh, good boy. Now I've just put a little bit of free YouTube music on there because obviously we can't use anything with a license on it. So we can put that in, we can power this thing up. So the amp turns on. You can see the volume pot's really scratchy. Now another thing worthy of mention are these speakers down here. And these speakers are Technics. Now they're the same as some I had. I picked these up off eBay for 75 bucks. And they're just two-way. And I bought these because they're identical to a set I had that actually sounded fairly reasonable. Now these ones have a problem in that we've got our tweeter working there, but this one here doesn't work, so yeah, it's absolutely dead. I don't like the music much, but we'll move it up and see if we can get a different song. Now I've just switched cameras because this one has a better mic on it. It's not really my type of music, but it's free, so I can use it. Now the problem I'm having is that the tweeter's working on this side, but it's not this side here. So we need to take that out and have a look. It could be a crossover problem, it could be a wiring problem, it could be anything. Now whenever we do things like this, I'm assuming, I think it's more likely to be a crossover issue than a tweeter, but whatever the case, if all looks well and there's nothing loose in there, we can actually take this tweeter out and try it in there, and if it works in there we know it's the crossover, or at least some other wiring issue inside. So I'm just going to pop this out and have a look and see what we come up with, because at the end of the day I want it to work. This is all just cheap stuff, so of course with the rest of the series not going to be working with such nasty stuff. Well, there you go, they're all connected still, so I'll take that off and I'll try it in this speaker, and if that tweeter works, we know I've got another issue. We probably shouldn't do this because the thing's running, but there we go. So we know that tweeter is absolutely fried, so we can keep that out. And as dead as a dono. I wonder why. It's unusual for an element to go, unless it's blue, of course. But that doesn't seem to be working at all. So that's one thing we need to rectify. Right, well, I've recorded that onto a cassette. Let's go back a little way. Well, that sounds as bad as good as the runs after a good night on the grog, but it's not that bad really, I guess. So we need to get another tweeter for that to really see what it's like. I might just try and go back a little bit further. This is YouTube music anyway, I'm not that thrilled with it, but it's not that bad actually, really. I was probably a bit harsh on it before. Right, so I picked up this dirty old HiFi open reel recorder, and I only picked it up because it looks cool. These things apparently sound fairly good, but I've no idea what this one's like. It does have the glass and crystal ferrite heads on it. It's got 3 heads and it's got 3 motors, so that instantly puts it at an advantage over some other machines. Now, I've had a couple of these before when I was a lot younger. One was a little portable one with speakers and that sort of stuff, and I had a TEAC one which I eventually gave to a school white elephant store. This was a couple $100 at eBay. As I said before, I don't need it at all, but it came with a whole bunch of 5-inch tapes. These are all 3 3/4 inches per second recorded. This one goes 3 3/4 and 7.5. Some of the older ones will record at 1 7/8, which is the same speed as what a cassette records at. And so I haven't mucked around with one of these beyonds, so I'm just going to thread it, see what happens. I think it goes through there and up through here. These are a bit of a pain in the neck to thread, and over this spool here. I'm just going to wind it back. And the idea, of course, is we just go through here. Better turn the machine on first. Where's the on-off plug? That doesn't sound too good, does it? That's better. That sounded rather bad. Okay, so there she is going. It's making all sorts of noises because I haven't threaded it too well, but at the end of the day, it seems to be working. Fast forward. Okay. The brake, I'll show you the brake inside in a minute, and if I rewind it, it should auto stop. Yeah, well it did, and then it broke the tape, so obviously we've got some work to do. Right, so we're not at a great start at the moment, so I'm just going to take that off. This thing's broken anyway, which probably didn't help it, but I want to take the front off and have a look, so I'll just unplug it first, which is now done. So we can start pulling stuff off. So I want to clean it up, see what it's like. No idea what I'm doing, but that is all good. So we'll start taking stuff off. And of course, here's a good view of the heads. We have an erase head, a record head, and a playback head. So that was the reason, one of the reasons that prompted me to get this machine. This is probably around 1978 to 1982. It's got a plastic front, which a lot of people don't like that sort of thing. They prefer the aluminium one. But hopefully it pays a dividend, we can use it. But at the moment it's pretty mangy. Okay, so we'll just pull some knobs off. And pull that off. And pull this off. That doesn't pull off. Hello, doggy. Alright, so I've got screws up here. We can just loosen those and they should release. Which they do. I'll take this. Oh, these are steel. That's pretty nifty, isn't it? So we always have to be careful when we're disassembling electronic goods, particularly if it's just being plugged in, because they contain things like called capacitors inside them, which are just like batteries. They hold charge. The difference is, of course, the capacitor will let go of all of its charge within what are called time constants. And that basically means it'll dump the whole charge in well under a second, but portions of that, if you know what I mean. So I'm having trouble getting this little Allen screw thing out. Here we go, done. That should plop out soonish, which it does. Oops, what have I got left now? This capstan and pinch roller arrangement. Well, the capstan's there, and the pinch roller is this little guy here. I wonder if that'll unscrew. Oh, look at that. Now, I'm a mechanic, I'm not an audio electronics technician. I do have electronics technician background, but it was in computing, so it certainly isn't to do with this. That pinch roller is in pretty good nick, it's fairly clean. We'll clean all these, the capstan here for example, everything with alcohol, some sort of solvent. But for now I just want to take this cover off and have a bit of a look. I'm just going to take those out. I'm doing this the wrong way, and of course technicians that look at the way I'm doing this are going to be cringing, but at the end of the day, as I said, my electronics qualification isn't on these things. There we go, that'll come off now. Just got to watch that little wire there, make sure we don't trap him, and then we can take that off. Whoa, look at that. Okay, so we can clean that faceplate up, and it's actually good taking this off because I can clean this without getting any spray or anything like that around here. And if we look at these little bands here, they're the brakes. So it's got a brake solenoid somewhere, I don't know what that is, and it strengthens these bands here attached. So if you pull that up, that'll apply the brakes to these two spools. Now there's something wrong with that because it busted a tape. But let's just pull the rest of it apart. Take the guts out of it. Right, so we have our main motor here, which also runs that flywheel down there, which that's the capstan that determines the tape speed. And we've got two little motors here for each spool, one there and one there. These little guys here are capacitors, I think. And yes, they are great big capacitors, and they carry a lot of voltage, so there's no way in a pink fit I'm going to touch anything there. That would be asking for a nasty, nasty shock. Has a linear power supply, just a normal transformer, and other bits of crap in there, resistors, all sorts of things. A lot of people with these machines, I'll just take this up, have a look, tend to replace capacitors on the main board down there to clear up the sound and that sort of thing, because they do stray from their original spec, if you know what I mean. And capacitors, electrolytic capacitors like these, are just two plates with a wire on each one and a dielectric between them, similar to a battery. And these ones particularly, these electrolytic ones, are actually, the plates are very long and they're rolled up and sort of put into a canister. And if you put them in with the polarity wrong, they can explode. But capacitors can be very small, nanofarads, picofarads, all sorts of things, but that's a big one, that's a big nasty one. And so I'm not sure of its purpose. It might be harmless touching it, but I'm not going to. Right, so I've got an open recorder in the nude, so I'm going to power it on. There's a little capstan roller going there, so the motor's running all the time, you can see it going there. But no tape is going through the tape path or anything like that. But if I put these on here, nothing happens. Oh, hang on. Got to withdraw, got to release that. You can see the lever's working. And when I take that off, you can see the counter's running over. When I take this off, you should see these bands tighten up to break everything, which it does. And then we got, what's this, fast forward. And even that, you can see the brakes running there to slow that spool down so you don't break tape, which is what we just did. What do you think, Rosie? And this one's going back there?
Very impressive.
I think so too.
Yes.
So that's all good. The lights work. There's a little light which looks like a neon thing, isn't it? Oh no, it's a glow. For the VU meter, it's got a record indicator. So what we'll do is we'll put it back together. I'm not going to do much with it. Just clean off that capstan roller, this one here, and make sure this is clean. That's the pinch roller, and that, as I said before, determines tape speed through it. And we might clean that front fascia, because I don't want to spray things to clean the front fascia off when of course I can get that spray over the heads. I want to keep them clean. Rightio, so we put it all back together with a nice clean front on it, so it already looks a lot better than it did. I haven't cleaned these up yet. That pinch roll there looks absolutely immaculate, looks good. But of course we need to use alcohol to clean up the capstan and a few other bits and pieces. And of course we've got to clean the heads as well, so I'm not sure what this is going to be like, but I can just bang that thing back on there, that just slides on. and we're good to test it. I'll just give that a quick clean up, then we'll go back in the lounge and see what we can work out with it. Alright, so basically it's disastrous because when I play it, it's playing backwards. Even if I go like this, there's nothing there. So what I think I've done is put it on about face, so it's got to be turned around. So I'll just fast forward off this spool onto that one, turn it around, hopefully we can get some noise out of it. It actually seems to be rewinding a little bit better without sort of the sprite. Maybe the thing has just been sitting around for too long, but that's actually perfect now. It's working really well. So I've got to get back to the start of the tape. I'm just going to record something onto it. I've never recorded with this, so I'm not sure what it's like. I'm just waiting to get to the start, and what I'll do, there's no leader tape on this. Oh, yes there is. So if I now play, actually what I might do, I've got to figure out how to do this. I'll pause it, that's pause, and press that and press play at the same time. Okay, so that's recording now that the light's on now, so I'll just, I'll just record a bit of crap, which is a bit of nothing onto here. That'll do there. Tape onto this, so if I go 7.5 inches, and, here we go. Alright, so we'll set our levels are, this is actually quite quiet, this music. Maybe I'll go for something noisier. That's going to peak out too much, so if I go back a bit, sort of there, I don't want it to distort. I'll just try a few more tracks. I've still got it paused. Okay, that'll do there, that's cool. Okay, so that's stopped. So now I've got the levels where I want them. What else do I have to do? Out is 7.5. Oh, and then so I'm ready to record. So I'll record something now and see how it goes. Now the only thing wrong with this so far is the fact that it's got these horrible little plastic reels. This one's cracked. That's a little 5-inch one. So this would look much better with a nice set of metal reels on it. Now I had 2 Radio Shack ones, Tandy ones, but I might have given them away with all the other tapes and the other open reel system I had years ago. So now you pay about $100 for them, but we'll just see what happens. Hopefully this sounds alright though. I'm not sort of hinging any great expectation on it because I haven't even cleaned the heads. And the tape I'm using is this Silver Sonic, which cost the owner 44 cents. So it's not going to be great tape. So we'll see how that went. That's not actually that bad, considering I've got a speaker with a tweeter out. And I'm using absolutely rubbish tape. And the difference is between 7.5, put it down to 3 3/4. It's not too good, is it? Now another part I found in a wardrobe is this old CDC turntable. The platter sounded very scratchy as I was turning it, and the reason for that was because I found this broken belt underneath. Now, this was actually in a cupboard inside, and it sort of perished. Now, the tape deck was out here in the garage, and I don't know why that lasted. All I can assume is the tape deck had very, very little use, and it was only ever used for making compilation tapes for the car and for parties and stuff like this, where the turntable, I used it all the time. It was always been used. I don't know how to get that off actually. I thought that just pulled off. Well, anyway, we can go through and restore this. Basically, all it's going to be is a bit of nifty. Give it a spray, give it a wipe, maybe a toothbrush in there, some cotton buds. These sorts of things are easy to restore too. Although they break very easily, you can take these off, cut out a piece of timber the same size, put a towel around it, stick it up on a couple of blocks of wood so it's nice and supported, then buff it with a car bar. With an automotive one, give it a bit of a colour sand with the 2000 grit to get rid of all the scratches, and that'll come up great. But I'm not going to bother, do you know what, because I'm not going to use it. Like most of the equipment I've got here, it's old, it's dated, I don't really want to use it, I want to get a new turntable. But if there's a tutorial, or if anybody wants a tutorial on how to do that, I can certainly do it. Now, under here is another component which I didn't use terribly much because I replaced it with nicer kit, and it's an old graphic equalizer. I've never bought expensive amplifiers. This is an ugly old thing. It's an old TF graphic thing. Oh, gain control, that's right. You can pump your gain up, so you can use quite a simple low power amplifier and then use this to sort of pump your gain up. I never used this much. I used a surround process with 2 amps and 2 separate graphics to give a time delay. And the graphics I use for Technics running with all the lights on them and all this sort of stuff. So, you know, there's not really all that much to this. I'll pull the cover off and we'll have a look. Rightio. And that's about the sum of it. What have we got here? Okay, bunch of slide pots there, a power switch, little transformer, very, very low power these things. There's not much to that, just a bunch of capacitors, little electrolytic ones, a couple of transistors, a couple of integrated circuits, not much at all. It's in very good condition inside. Again, this hasn't been used much. So that's all the graphic equalizer is, not much there at all, so I'll just pop the cover back on. I might go and connect this up actually and see what happens. This has, it's unswitched, so it's got a constant power supply at the back, which is an American type one. This of course only consumes 6 watts, so absolutely no power in that. You get the gain control, so you can use it with a low power amplifier, which gives you the big noise and all that sort of stuff, but you still have low wattage equipment, so that's the reason. I also like to fiddle around with the sound a little bit, and I'm going to use this on this machine I've got inside, that rubbishy one, and the reason for that is because we have a tweeter out, so we can knock some of the bass back and all that sort of stuff, make it sound a little bit better if we can. Not much inside a turntable, I wouldn't think. I'm just taking the feet off it now to have a quick look. You can see got little spring things on there for shock absorption and that sort of thing. And this was another cheap piece of rubbish that I bought back in the day. There you go. Oh, it's got an AC motor. Okay, I was in the mechanism, a micro switch to stop the turntable platter going or stop the motor going when you lift the needle and put it back to rest. Speed control. A little AC motor there, which surprises me, that's shock absorbed as well. There. Not a dissimilar type of motor, what you'd see in a bathroom ceiling fan. Big capacitor across the power supply. I think that acts as a filter, electrical filter. That's about it. It's just a moulded plastic piece of rubbish, really. There's no, well, it's also earthed as well. There's no pre-amplification done here. That's all done in the amplifier with the sort of phono setting. But that's all there is to a turntable. There's absolutely nothing in it. At least not one like this. As far as other bits and pieces are concerned, these are in the cupboard. Of course, that's a JVC amp that I had. This is stuff that I was preparing to get rid of, but no one wanted it, couldn't sell it. That's a Technics receiver, which I'll probably use because that one I've got over there is pretty well had it. And this is a Technics surround processor, which I used to use. It's got a black face on it because I ordered it separately when I bought this machine new. The silver one will be in its box at my mother's house, I would assume. I haven't seen it for a long, long time. I'm not going to use this. I used to run this with 2 separate amps and graphic equalizers. There goes the dog. So the primary signal, of course, was run through graphic and amp, and of course the secondary one was as well. And it sort of gave a time delay sort of effect to the music, like a concert hall sort of thing. It gave a lot of really, really good acoustics in a small room. So the silver face is somewhere at Mother's house, and we're sort of cleaning that place up at the moment anyway, so I'll get that back. Don't think I'll use this. I'm not sure that I will. I bought it from Brash's. There's the instructions there. On the 16th of July 1987 for $199. So there you go. And I've got all the old documentation with the other kit that I bought, so not sure I'll use that. I might see how this receiver stacks up with this system here. Again, it's black, it's too modern, I don't want to use it. But I do want to see if it still works. Looking inside the receiver, of course you've got your obligatory power supply there. These things vary in size depending on the power output of the machine. I think there's about 30 watts a channel or something like that. Dirty great big amplifier. It's all concealed in one big sort of transistor arrangement down the side there. I'll just see if we can pull that up and let you see it. This is their stereo amplifier. It's sitting on a huge heatsink, aluminium heatsink. Aluminium disperses heat, and of course we've got all these cooling fins off the side here with some clean vents at the bottom to try and encourage air to go past and to cool the thing off. A couple of big caps. Again, we don't touch the backs of those because they could house a nasty shock and that sort of thing. This is the display section, of course, some switches and a circuit board and all that sort of other business, but that's the main guts of it there, the amplifier and the power supply, and of course your power switch and that sort of thing is over here. Not familiar with these terribly well, but you get the picture anyway. This is the Technics receiver, so we'll turn that on and see if that works as well. And there's another view there of the amplifier. It's all concealed in that large arrangement there. That'll have big power transistors and that sort of thing in it. There's a few pins coming off it. There's a door going. Also, it's got heatsink paste across there, that white stuff. That's the same as what they use on the modules on the side of distributors on cars, and that'll give a good thermal contact between the amplifier and the heatsink just to get rid of all that heat. Without this, that thing would burn out in no time. But one thing to keep in mind when you're buying a tape machine is look at the pinch roller here. Now that's got a little bit of a track in it, but not much. You can see where the tape's bent, but it's not discoloured at all. Now I haven't cleaned that, I just wiped it, didn't clean it properly. But I've seen machines where these are just dark brown that match the tape. And of course you know they've been thrashed to an inch of their life. They've been used quite a lot. Now even this tape deck, or I should say cassette deck, down here you can see the roller there has a little bit of marking on it. It's pretty dusty in there, but at the end of the day this didn't get much use either. This was only used to make compilation tapes for parties and also the car. Most of what I listened to in the car were cassette singles, but I never used this as a hi-fi piece as such. One, because I didn't like the look of it, but not just that, I always use records and CDs. So this doesn't have much use, and I've seen them on eBay advertised where they're absolutely filthy, both on the capstan and the pinch roller, so it's something to keep in mind. There are two reasons why people prefer open reel recorders to cassette decks, and one of them of course is they look a lot cooler. Particularly with metal spools on them, there's nothing sort of more visually appealing in terms of hi-fi gear than one of these things sort of rotating in the background. But the real reason of course is sound reproduction. Of course if you look at a cassette tape, it's 4mm wide. Now these things travel at 1 7/8" speed, which is 4.5 inches per second, or centimetres per second, which means you've got effectively this much tape with recorded information on, bearing in mind of course that there's A and B sides and they're divided up into tracks. So track 1 through 4, 2 for side 1s, 2 for side 2 in stereo of course, means you're only getting 2mm, a portion of tape this long for 1 second of audio. Now that's all the frequencies that you're listening to, that's 1 second of audio fitting on something that size. Now open reel at 7.5 inches per second is considerably longer, and you can see there, open reel tape I think is 6mm in width. It's a lot wider, but of course for the 1 second of audio you're getting with all those frequencies, and that's including noise as well, you're getting much more surface area in which to have your music playing, and that's the reason, given that there's so much more room, that you get better sound reproduction. There's more real estate for the sound to sit on. Right, so this is our AV surround processor, and it looks nice and graphic like an 80s thing would. Not particularly attractive by today's standards. Not much kit inside. Most of this, there's a few switches, a few lights, a small power supply, and of course a host of connections at the back with a few capacitors, and of course a little video board there. I don't know what that does, but that's about the sum of it. Doesn't seem to be able to get any noise out of this thing. It's got an antenna in it, but I should be hearing more than just this. Whatever the case, it does work with the reel-to-reel, and it sounds pretty good too. And of course, this is the JVC amp that I used, and this is the most powerful of them, and it was the one that sort of had the cleanest reproduction of sound. And I don't reckon that sounds bad, given that it's on a manky old 44-cent tape. So that. The only problem with this, it doesn't look very good. And that's pumping some sound now, and it's only just here because it's got the boost control on. Well, I was all ready to sign off, and I went inside to get this tape here, and heard running water. And of course the upstairs bathroom is flooded because one of the hoses is let go underneath the vanity unit. But whatever the case, hope you've enjoyed this video. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you later.